the Talk Station is proud to present The War Files. The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam.
Hugh Aderholt, our guest here. And Mr. Aderholt, where are you from originally?
Monroe, North Carolina.
And then you live where now?
I live here in Morehead City.
Tell me a little background about you. You were in World War II.
Yes, sir, I was in World War II.
What branch?
In the Army, infantry.
Infantry.
Yeah.
All right. And when did you enter into the Army?
February the 2nd, 1943. Everybody was joining, leaving, going to service.
How old were you when you went into the Army?
I liked about a month being 18, and they put me in the reserves till my 18th birthday, which was 8th of March.
Where did you do your basic training?
Camp Robinson, Arkansas.
And what were you trained to do?
Well, it was infantry training. This was a replacement training center.
And where did you end up being shipped? Where did you serve?
In Italy.
Tell us a little something about your experience in Italy.
Well, I first joined, I went through North Africa. My ship landed in Casablanca, and I got shipped out from North Africa to Italy, and I joined the 34th Division. We stayed there about 5 days, and they put us all in boxcars, and we went on in boxcars 9 days going across North Africa to Bizerta. Well, we stayed there, and they would ship out so many each day or every other day to Italy.
How long a ship ride was that?
Oh, we left on Sunday about 12, and we arrived there before dark.
And where in Italy did you land?
Naples. We stayed there for about 2 weeks, and then they was shipping guys out to different outfits to replace the companies that had wounded and all killed.
Where did they ship you to?
Well, my outfit was squeezed out of the front line, and they was back in the reserves in Olive Grove when I joined my outfit. We stayed there a while and moved back up to the front line.
What was it like on the front line? When you say, a lot of people aren't aware of what it was like on the front line.
Well, it was pretty rough. It rained a lot in Italy, and sometimes it rained for 2 weeks at a time. A lot of artillery and gunfire. We kept moving up, and we left from Venafro, Italy, and fought up through a long range of mountains, and we ran the Germans off of these mountains into a valley, and we fought across that valley into Casino.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where it was so rough around Casino area. We tried to go around to the right flank and got out in a minefield, run into the Germans, and they opened up on us with machine guns. And we had to fall back in the creek bed, and I got out of the creek and started running, and 2 of my buddies lay there dead, and they were shooting at me while I was running. I was afraid they would throw mortars in that creek bed, and I wanted to get out of there. So I found me a foxhole back there and stayed in it. And a few days later, we didn't have any officers, and they shipped the second lieutenant up, and we went into Casino that night. He was supposed to lead us in there. We was moving up all during the night, and they laid down a heavy artillery barrage on the town. So we snuck in there before daylight. We only had 40 men left in the company out of about 200. We'd been fighting for about 30-something days, and every time we go into battle, we'd lose men.
What did you eat? A lot of people don't think about this, but you're eating and you're sleeping and you're...
You didn't sleep much in the front lines.
No. What about food?
Well, we had sea rations. It was in a can.
Mm-hmm.
We got three different varieties every day. There's 3 different cans, and they'd switch when we had these K rations. They was in a wax box, and there wasn't too much to eat in them.
From your experience in casino, what happened?
I went into a house. I was carrying a bazooka at the time.
How heavy is a bazooka? A lot of people don't know how much it weighs.
Well, it's about 5 feet long, and it's just like a section of pipe, and it's battery operated, and you load it from the rear end.
Right.
So I had an assistant gunner. He carried the ammunition, and I went into this house and stood my bazooka up on the back porch, and I went into this room, and a little later on I heard a commotion over in the other room, and I went over there to see what was going on, and they had captured 12 Germans. There was young kids sitting in the floor in a circle, and they was giving them cigarettes. So I went on back over in my room looking across the street, and after a while I heard them say that they had spotted American tanks up the street, and that made me feel good. And a little later on they seen one with a swastika on it. It had been knocked out. So it wasn't long till they pulled a German tank up there, and they put about 2 rounds in that house. But I don't know how many was killed, but I got out. I was lucky to get out alive. And I ran out the back, and I found me a bunker because I was afraid to go across this open field, because they had a lot of minefields around there. So I crawled in that bunker, and about 4 or 5 more guys came in there behind me, and we stayed there till the Germans found us.
So you got captured?
Yeah, I was captured.
What happened after your capture?
Well, they took us up there and searched us, and then they carried us on up there. We was walking up to this building in town there where they was going to take us, and they put us down in the basement of this building, and then the heavy shell fire started, and we had to stay in there 2 days and nights before the Germans could get us out.
So this is the Allies were bombing the location you were located?
Yeah, they was shelling the town heavy. Yeah.
All right, and then so you were a POW.
Yeah.
Then what happened?
They didn't give us anything to eat or any water to drink, and it was cold and damp down in that building. And they finally got us out and loaded us on the truck, and there's still a few artillery shells coming into town. And they carried us to a shed built onto a house, and they put us in this shed, and they had some straw or hay over there, and we fell down on it and went to sleep. And about daylight I had a headache, and I was standing up stretching, and a shell hit right up over my head. And one hit at the back end, and one hit at the front open end and killed a guard. And it had a slate roof on the house and the shed, and all I could see was dust. I wheeled around when the shell hit and got out of the building, and I jumped over a wall out there and run down that wall, and a shell hit in front of me. I turned around and came back, and the shell landed in front of me there. So I took off across the open field and made a big circle. I came back, and I run into 2 Germans pulling a mortar barrel with a rope, and they handed me the rope, and I was so weak I couldn't hardly pull it. And I went back up to the house where we was in to see about my friends, and we gathered up the ones and carried them down to this house right behind the one we was in. Germans had a first aid station down there, but some of them wounded pretty bad, and some of them was laying there asleep. They didn't know what hit them. They were still asleep when the shell hit.
Wow.
There's 2 or 3 killed standing within 4 feet of me. I don't know why it didn't take my head off when a shell hit up there.
The Germans took care of their prisoners as well as their own when it came to injuries?
We went down to the aid station. The guard got killed that was guarding, and we just went on down to this house. They had Red Cross painted on top of the house, And we just carried what guys that couldn't walk into there. And a German medic in there could speak English, and he was patching up some of their guys. He said, we'll take care of you as soon as we get our men patched up. So they patched us up, and they had a couple ambulances out there, and they loaded us in them ambulances, and they carried us back to Florence, Italy, to a hospital, and patched us up better, and fed us a meal. And the ones that were wounded bad, they stayed in the hospital, and the rest of them, they carried us to a prison camp over in the edge of town there in Florence, Italy.
How long did you stay in Florence?
Oh, about 2 weeks, I guess.
And then what happened?
They loaded us in a boxcar, and we headed for Germany. Carried us into Germany.
Where did you end up in Germany?
They sent us to a British and Canadian stalag. We stayed there maybe a couple of days, and then they sent us to a regular American stalag. And we stayed there till about the last of April, and they sent 40 of us out on this big government farm to do farm labor.
What was it like in the stalag?
Well, it wasn't too bad, but just being confined in that barbed wire fence, it was kind of small, the little camp we was in.
Okay, how many were in your stalag?
Probably 100.
How were you treated?
Well, they treated us well.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. All right, how long were you a prisoner of war?
About 15 months.
And then how were you released?
The farm I was on was over close to Poland and down a ways from the Baltic Sea. I was in the Russian sector, and we stayed there till the Russians had pushed the Germans back almost to this farm, and we had to leave. And the guard marched us up this little town, which was about 2 miles, and put us on a train, and they had a gathering point. There was 1,000 POWs met, and the snow was on the ground. It was in February, and it was pretty cold. And we started walking before dark, and we finally run out of the air where there was these big farms, and we had to split up, and we was marching in columns of about 200. We had a space between each column of men on account of airplanes,
Right. Now, did you? They were marching you to a release point, or?
Yeah, they said that old guard said we was going home, and they was carrying us back to run into the American front lines. And we walked 2 months before we got released.
2 months?
2 months sleeping in barns.
So they marched you into the American lines to keep you from being keeping you from being
from
the Russians
from
capturing
Russians capturing us. Yes.
How did you relate to the German guards? What were they like?
Well, most of them was old men, too old to fight, and they would just they would change guards ever so many miles. We'd walk a good ways, and then they'd pick up new guards.
So you walked for 2 months to get to the...
We got 1 day of rest on Sunday.
What did you do for food?
We didn't have much food. We got a slice of bread, ration of bread of a morning, and maybe a little marmalade or margarine on it, and we walked all day on that. Nothing to eat at lunchtime. And at night, we got old thin soup.
Where was your release point? Do you remember that?
No, I think we were down in Belgium somewhere, maybe.
All right.
We ran into a spearhead one afternoon and got liberated.
What about the guards? Were the guards captured in that?
They ran off and left us before they got captured.
2 questions. What was it like with the Germans? How did you feel about this in the midst of the war? I mean, you'd been shooting at them. They'd been trying to kill each other, but here you were meeting them as guards in a stalag, and here they were marching you to freedom.
I wasn't mad at them or anything.
Right.
I mean,
I know that's right.
They treated us well.
Hugh Aderholt, of course, our guest here. After your release, where did you end up?
We stayed in this little farm village for about 3 days, and they came and picked us up in a truck, tractor and trailer.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 200 of us, I guess. And they carried us back to a German airfield that they had taken over.
Mm-hmm.
And there we got a shower and got new clothes.
What about your clothes? You had been how long you'd been captured? How long? 15 months?
Yeah.
What about clothing? What about supplies? The Red Cross?
Well, we'd go into town every month or two, and all these supplies we got came through Geneva, Switzerland, into Germany. And the town was Satine, where we go pick up our supplies.
Mm-hmm.
The guard would go with us in a wagon. He'd take 2 men and go into town. It'd take about all day to pick up what we needed. And we got food supplies. I mean, food parcel.
Mm-hmm.
It was 10 pounds of food in a parcel.
Did you have any communications back home while you were in the POW camp in the Stalag?
Well, we could write letters back home, but there wasn't anything you could say.
Did you get letters from home?
No, I never did.
Who was at home? I never asked that question.
Just my father and mother, and I had 2 sisters and a brother.
All right. Did your brother serve in the military?
Well, I had a brother 15 years old that my mother signed him up to go in the Navy after I left to go overseas. He wouldn't go to school. My mother signed him in the Navy, and he wound up in the Pacific.
And did he make it through?
Yeah,
right.
he made it back. Yeah.
All right. And how about when you were repatriated? Where did you come back to the States shortly thereafter?
Well, we stayed in this German airfield till they could fly us back. They was flying so many back to Port Le Havre, France.
Mm-hmm.
And we stayed there for maybe a couple of weeks, and then they loaded us on through ships and sent us back to the States.
Where did you land in the States? In New York?
No, up in Virginia, Norfolk,
Norfolk,
I guess.
And then from there, did you go back into the Army?
No, they fed us. I went through Camp Patrick Henry, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
That's the camp I left from to go overseas. And they had a big, huge mess hall, and they ran us through there. There was 3 shiploads of POWs landed there, and they ran us through the mess hall. They had German cooks to cook us up a good meal. A special meal, and it was really good.
Was that the best meal you had
That's the best meal I've had in a long time.
All right, and then from where? Where did you go from there?
Well, they took us down to a little building and gave us some money, and so we could get they'd let you go right on home. And I had to go through Fort Bragg and get some more money.
Mm-hmm.
And I got home about 11 o'clock at night.
Was your family surprised to see you?
Yeah,
Did they know?
They sure was.
Did you stay in the Army?
Yeah, I stayed in there another year. I re-enlisted.
Where did you end up serving that last year?
In Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Stateside. All right.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Hugh, recognizing that you were a POW and the experience you had in the war, you came back home. What did you do after the Army?
I got me a job in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the Charlotte Pipe and Foundry Company.
What did you do with your uniforms and all the memories that you had? What did you end up doing with all those?
I think my youngest brother wore them out. I don't have anything left.
Are you going to the September 22nd honor flight to Washington, D.C.?
Yes.
Have you been to the World War II Memorial?
Not
before?
yet. No, I haven't.
So many World War II veterans came home and went right back to work and never worried about the war.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, some guys got discharged and there wasn't any work out there.
Right.
Because everything was returned over to the military.
Right.
And making war materials and all that. And there wasn't any jobs out there. They hadn't started,
Interesting. All right.
doing other stuff yet. So some of the guys came back in, and I decided I'd re-enlist for another year, and after that was up, well, you had to re-enlist for 3 years or get out.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided to get out.
Hugh, thank you very much for your time. This is a great story. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
You've been listening to The War Files, a selection of interviews honoring our warriors of the greatest generation, World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. The War Files is a TalkStation presentation.